Welcome to Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast with Colin McDougall and Richard Zogel.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast with my good friend and returning hero from Mexico, Mr. Richard Zogel. How are you, Richard? Welcome back.
I am well. I'd like to report that things were fine, even though it was chaotic the moment my wife and I were heading down to Mexico last Monday, a week ago. As we all know, the cartels started to act up in Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara, and we are going to Cancun, which is a few thousand miles away. But because our children and our grandchildren were down there, we said we're going down there regardless of what happens, and then everything settled down in a couple of days. We had a lovely vacation with our 12 people, our grandchildren. It was fantastic. We avoided the Tijuana two-step on our return, which was great. So it's behind us. Got a new laptop, got new equipment, brand new equipment. So I'm excited to get going.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was concerned for you.
A lot of people were.
And so very, very glad to hear that you and your family both made it down, made it back, and had a good time. And I think it's probably net positive that you got some time away from the computer and the phone and got to sort of really chill with your family. That's great. So, and nothing has happened in golf since you've been gone except for everything, and so we got a lot of great stuff to talk about this week. Obviously, sort of headlining what we're going to talk about. We're going to spend all the time talking about Bay Hill.
Yeah.
Akshay Bhatia's win after never leading for the whole tournament.
Akshay Bhatia, very impressive. Yep.
Yeah, very impressive. We're going to talk a little bit about the Canadian Open, the Canadians on both the Bay Hill and the Puerto Rico Open, and sort of see what we can expect from them at the Players this week. I hear the Players in the fifth major. I don't know if you've heard that, but that's the rumor.
Oh, it's always been a major. It's been a major for 25 years. If I can pile that on top of the pile, okay.
Yes, exactly. And then the deep dive, I wanted to talk about this with you for a while. I have some background in business case writing, and I wrote a case a while back on Live Golf and the PGA Tour, framed from the context of the PGA Tour being a monopoly, and how this is a new market entrant of competition and so forth. And I wanted to spend some time talking, sort of deconstructing what it meant to be on the PGA Tour, what it means to be on the PGA Tour, how they behaved, sort of lining it up with perhaps some monopolistic behaviors, and sort of see where we land. And I think people will find it very interesting, what it's like when you actually get your card, sort of what happens from there. So we'll spend some time talking about that.
We can do that.
Of course, we're going to spend some time on the Mind Track mental golf moment, which I think, one of the things that came up this week was a delay, on-course delay while you're playing, which I think is got to be among the more challenging things to deal with, especially when you've got some momentum to what's happening on the course. How do you deal with it? How do you return to that sort of space and continue playing well? And yeah, I think we're going to, and then we'll wrap up. I have one or two stories from Bay Hill, believe it or not, and from my college days, actually. And then we'll wrap it up at the end. So why don't we start with what happened on the tour this week? Bay Hill at the home of the king, Arnie Palmer, and your thoughts on what we saw from the week that was.
Well, first of all, let's look at Bay Hill as a legacy to Arnold Palmer. I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful legacy. And I remember, playing Bay Hill so many times. I love the golf course. I think it's Arnold Palmer's best designed golf course. I don't think Arnold Palmer was a very good designer. He put them out in volume, and Ed C. was his man that ran them and built them. And, just a quick story on how Arnie, I remember Jim Nelford and I were playing in Palm Springs, and we were playing, because there was 5 golf courses to play. We had to play a lot of practice rounds before the tournament started. And we're sitting there waiting for transportation to pick us up at PGA West Arnold Palmer Golf Course. And Arnie comes zipping in. He gets out. It's the first time he's been to his Arnold Palmer Golf Course. And he goes, "Where is the driving range?" And Nelford and I are going, "Arnie, come on, man. You built this place, and you don't even know where the driving range is." So that was a bit of an indication. So, I mean, the legendary Arnold Palmer was just fantastic. Choir boy, he was not. I'm not going to get into into the details, but boy, oh boy, was he a fascinating. He was great. So when you go to Bay Hill as a PGA Tour player, playing in the Arnold Palmer, when he was alive, you didn't dare wear, you took your hat off inside. I mean, you probably heard those stories. And if he didn't, he would take your hat off for you and do it very politely, but it would embarrass you. So we would love, the teeth of Bay Hill are in the greens. It's a real good ball strikers golf course. It's a bit on the short side given today's equipment, how far the ball goes. That's another, how far the ball goes. That's another discussion down the road. But the greens are treacherous. And we watched it a little bit on Saturday afternoon when it got really fast. Guys were running in there, so you had to you had a little fear in there, and if you didn't watch it, you could slip it 4 feet by the hole real quickly. The rains came, softened the course. They made a bunch of birdies and eagles coming in. It was a fascinating story. And Akshay Bhatia, what do you say about this guy? I mean, this guy turns pro at 17. He skipped right out of high school. He turns pro, and then he hits the Monday qualifying scene, the 4-spot Monday qualifying, and he grinds it out for a number of years. He has a pursuit about him. He has a manner about him that's very impressive. He's only 24, but yet he's obviously been a pro for about 6 years now, and very seasoned one. Loved how we watched him and got a look at his body language as he was playing yesterday. Yes, he didn't have the lead until the final hole, and we can talk about Daniel Berger as well. He handled it really, really well for the most part. But the but is there that caused him not to win. But very impressive. So give me your thoughts on Akshay Bhatia. I like the guy's got a wingspan that's massive, long and lanky and loose, and he can let the ball go. He's got a lot of club head speed.
Yeah, he's I would characterize him as fun to watch. A few things I noticed: his swing. He has a very low follow through. Like he flights his ball almost on every iron shot. Looks to me. He obviously putts extremely well.
Good point.
He didn't seem to change his demeanor. I watched it Saturday. He hit in the lake on 3 and made par. And he struck me as a guy who sort of has been, for lack of a better word, I think to your point, tour hardened already. Yeah. And understands that it's a war of attrition. You're going to get good breaks, poor breaks. You're going to hit some bad shots. He seems to accept all of that extremely well. He won $4 million. My hope is that maybe he'll go out and have, a couple of cheeseburgers and put on a few pounds, but he's so skinny. But I really, really liked watching him. He just seems like a genuinely good guy is my take on it. And the other thing, and I'll talk about a couple of my experiences, Bay Hill from my college days, but one of the things I think, I agree with you. It's from a design perspective, it's got to be his best. That is to say, Palmer. And one unique feature is that people may not know watching the tournament on TV. I think is that holes 3, 4, and 5 are very similar to holes 11, 12, 13.
They are. Yeah,
they're almost
going around the lake.
Copy paste. Yeah, they go around the lake and then a reachable par 5 and then a short par 4. But from a as you play, it's like, man, I feel like I'm playing the same 3 holes again. Similar. Not that they're bad holes; they're good holes. But I just think most people watching it wouldn't recognize that there's that sort of duality between the front 9 and the back 9.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the walking the gauntlet, and I'm going to use this term constantly. I kind of. I have so much of it in my book that both Akshay Bhatia and Daniel Berger had some, proving to do in walking the gauntlet on the final round. So they're in the last group, and Daniel Berger, who's come off some injury, hasn't won in quite some time. It's almost as if he has to prove it all over again to himself. But very quickly, he was able to dive into his files and his mind and his experience and really establish a calmness in his routine, and being able to perform and hit great shots and walk the gauntlet successfully. You know, he made the turn. Akshay Bhatia missed a 2.5-foot putt on the 9th hole. So Berger's got a 5-shot lead with 9 holes to go. He's in a wonderful position, and until he gets to 13.
Right.
He makes one little mistake with his routine, his execution. He's got a gap wedge in his hand. There's water right, and sure, you're not going to go at the pin on that one, but he pulls it like 40 feet offline into the bunker, and then gets a fried egg lie, where now he's in real serious trouble, and he handled that situation brilliantly. So he couldn't shoot at the pin. If he shoots at the pin, in all likelihood, it's going to go through the green into the water. Now he's in trouble. So he decides to hit his fried egg from the middle of the bunker down the fairway a little bit, the entrance to the front edge, hits it, and then goes up against this big tuft of second cut grass, which is now he's in real trouble. But he gets it up and down, handles the situation really well, and then stabilize coming in. Then they're coming down. Akshay birdies 4 holes in a row, gets on a rampage. Then on the 16th hole, he's got a 6-iron into his second shot on the par 5. Another example of equipment golf, the ball going too far, having a 6-iron in, and pushes this shot because the ball is, the pin is tucked left, really close to the water. And he pushes. He's aiming in the middle of the green, and they didn't talk about it during the telecast, but he pushed that damn golf ball and knocked it to 3 feet away. Berger handled it really well and executed a shot, hit the middle of the green, 2-putted, got his birdie, and then unfortunately he made his on 17 he had a putter from well off the green, and he just hit it too hard, ran it 7 feet by, missed it coming back, and then hit a poor tee shot on 18. Was able to make a brilliant par. I think it was about an 8-foot putt for par. That type of thing, just to push it into the playoff. Hit another poor shot, and it was Akshay Bhatia's win to be had. So great win for Akshay Bhatia. Daniel Berger is well on his way back. He's a tough customer. He's a good player, and he will be performing well this year. And he's highly motivated now that he didn't win, because he feels like he deserved to win that, and he should have won the Arnold Palmer Invitational.
Yeah, I agree. It was his to win. He had to lead the whole time. He played brilliantly early on, especially, and at a different level than everybody else. On crusty greens, very, very challenging. So yeah, hopefully he takes the positives away. That is Berger to say, and moves forward. One question that popped to my mind as I was watching this that I wanted to put to you was he makes a great putt to go into the playoff, but he has to feel a little bit disappointed that he's in a playoff, considering he had to lead the whole time.
Absolutely.
And I wondered, as I was watching that, what potential influence the caddy may have on reframing his mindset for the playoffs, such that he sort of isn't sort of thinking of failure. He's treating it as an opportunity.
Oh, I don't think Berger was thinking as a lost opportunity. I think his head was on properly. His mistake was on 17 to get into the playoff in the first place. He that tee shot just got over the green. He had about 5 feet of fairway cut to navigate before his ball got on the green. He hit a little hard. That was his mistake right there. So he should not even have been in the playoff to begin with. Right. He should have won that thing by a shot. And but in hindsight, now he's in the playoff. I believe that when I try and read his body language and try and get some type of reflection on what's going on in his mind, he was fine. When he didn't win in his interview, I'm looking for those tells as well. He is fine. He's not happy he didn't win. There's no question about it. But he's got $2.2 million to lick his wounds with. But I think it's going to motivate him. It's going to give him more. I think, all golfers, every single golfer, whether you're a tour player or an average golfer, you've always think you've left much on the table than you've actually gotten in this game. He feels this win was his. But it didn't work out, and I think he's going to handle it well. This happens. It happens all the time, as we talk about. But I think Daniel Berger his mind wasn't, other than that routine, as I said, on that gap wedge on 13 and a couple of tee shots on 12. I think he needs to kind of look at those in pressure situations where he can handle his shot routine better, because those were two poor tee shots on 18 and one real poor shot that cost him on with the gap wedge on 13.
Right. The same week, the Puerto Rico Open was on. They often run these sort of dual events because there's a limited entry into Bay Hill, and so they have an opportunity to play this week in Puerto Rico. Ricky, I believe it's pronounced Castillo, but I kept hearing them on the broadcast saying Castillo, which is not how it's spelled, but we'll cover both. Wins by a shot over Chandler Blanchet, which has got to be close to my level of enjoyment of funny names as Aldrich's putt geeter. Chandler Blanchet, I just thought, that's like a combination of a Friends character and the French villain in Ricky Bobby, Talladega Nights. Some sort of weird dynamic. I just thought that was a very funny name. Anyways, and then our guy, Blades Brown, comes third, which is great. He's
very impressive.
Very, very impressive. John Daly II has a great week as an amateur, and has some very quotable lines as well. The other thing to take away for me with that was there was, actual, I would describe as a pocket of Canadians all the Canadians were within 3 shots of one another, all 5, which I thought was very interesting.
Sloan played well,
Yeah, they played, sort of good results there. The Canadians at Bay Hill, sort of, I would say, passable results. One of the things, this is a big week coming up at Tour, the Players Championship. There's going to be some Canadians there. I was curious, your thoughts on the chances of any of them contending, and who we might want to be rooting for or expect to sort of play well at the Players this week.
Sure. Touching base on Puerto Rico, PGA Tour event, Blades Brown finishing, this guy's 18 years old. Boy, what the level of maturity he plays and then speaks in the media conferences thereafter is very impressive. And he continues, and I'm waiting to see, is this just a flash in the moment? Or, so right now it's pretty damn consistent. So that's impressive. We get to continue to watch him and see what he does. Interesting about John Daly Jr. Interesting, very fascinating. I think he has he has some good qualities. And John Daly, he's a talented player, very talented player, and a very empathetic, giving, generous person. Reckless to an extreme degree, no question about that. But it also appears to me, and I'm going to continue to watch, and we should all watch, is John Daly II. He seems to not have that reckless abandon that his father has, but he has the fearlessness that his father has, and I think that's a good combination. So he's another guy,
and the quotability.
Well, that's the fearless. He doesn't give a shit.
I know.
And they're
like, are you going to go back to the range and work on stuff for tomorrow? He's like, I'm really tired. I think I'm just going to go do nothing.
Yeah, go to the beach or something. Yeah, exactly.
It's like every other player's like, I'm going to go with factor and I'm going to put in lots of hours and I'm going to be ready for tomorrow. He's like,
Yeah, well, like his father, he's not bullshitting himself.
Yeah,
I mean, he's
I
true to
love
his,
it.
And I think that's what gives him freedom. One thing that I did notice, and good for Roger Sloan to play well. I think what we're going to talk quite a bit about is, Adam Hadwin played in Puerto Rico in a PGA Tour event.
Yep.
Now Adam Hadwin's, in order to get back to the PGA Tour, there's 2 paths. There's one on the PGA Tour, and there's one through the Korn Ferry Tour. And, and having been there myself, like literally gotten back to the PGA Tour at 43 years old, I learned through experience and failure that, in my opinion, the best way to go back is to choose a path and then give it 100%. Do not share your path with one Korn Ferry Tour route or the PGA Tour route, because there is a big delusion factor that will step in. And I don't think Adam's going to get into enough PGA Tour events unless he's able to win fast and early. Right. He's sitting 11th on the Korn Ferry Tour money list. They take the top 20 to the PGA Tour. And the last 2 weeks, he played on the PGA Tour. So if he was playing on the Corn Ferry Tour the last 2 weeks, I would like to think that he would be piling on the points list, and it would, so I'm of the opinion that it set him back a bit. And I think he needs to be very careful on because your burn rate, your energy burn rate is there, and come towards the end of the season. Like I put all my focus in 2001 on getting back on the Corn Ferry Tour, to a point where I decided I'm withdrawing from the RBC Canadian Open, not playing my national championship, so I could go down to Idaho to play in a Corn Ferry Tour event, because I needed to make money to ensure that I would get onto this path. So I don't like the dilution factor that's happening there, and I hope he's able to two things: either win on the PGA Tour in the few events that he's in, the 8 or 9, 10 tournaments he's going to get in on the PGA Tour. But I'd like to see him focus all his attention, 100% of it, on the Corn Ferry Tour, and then recuperate, and then go back after the Corn Ferry Tour. Continually do that until he wins 3 times out there and gets a Battlefield promotion.
Yeah, I think it's probably sage advice for him, or at minimum build up a big enough cushion. Like if you're a number 1 or number 2 sort of going away, where you're absolutely certain, sure, go play in some PGA Tour events. But
exactly. First things first.
Yeah, first things first, exactly. Now, I think that's a good pivot, sort of talking about regaining your card, to the next part of the discussion that we want to have today, which is sort of around, the PGA Tour. The discussion I want to frame that we have is around the PGA Tour being a monopoly. As I mentioned off the top, I wrote a business case about the sort of the incursion of live golf on the PGA Tour. My view going into writing that case was there were a lot of elements to monopolistic behavior by the PGA Tour. But I think before we sort of get into some of those and maybe talk about them a little bit, I think it'd be very interesting for people to understand sort of the process. Like you walk off the green having qualified out of Q School or through the Corn Ferry or whatever it might be. What happens functionally in terms of you getting your actual card? Like, do you sit in my image is you sit in a dark room with a light, like you're being interrogated for a crime, and they're like, sign here, Richard, you're going to give everything away. But what is it actually like?
Well, having gotten my tour card 6 different times, I've gone through 5 PGA Tour qualifying school and made them 5. And then one at 43 years old, won access to the PGA Tour through the Corn Ferry Tour, where I finished 13th on the money list on the 2001 Corn Ferry Tour. The very first one goes back to 1981, the fall, and I remember I got in it was 4 rounds, a year before they went to 6 rounds, and I was right on the bubble, and I had to wait 2 hours before all the cards got in to determine whether my score was going to make it or not. And so you got to worry. You're just going crazy as far as anxiety. Am I going to make it? What's everyone doing out there? And it's not in your hands. So it comes in that I make it on the bubble. I go, I'm 22 years old, and I'm way down outside of Houston, Texas, at this qualifying school, and I make it. And the first thing I say to my mind, holy shit, I've got a PGA Tour card. It's kind of surreal. And so there were only 35 spots or 25 spots at the time, 25 spots. And then I'm kind of going, well, what does that mean? And there's no cell phones, and then so and then you're in a place where you're seeing the happiest people in the world, the guys who make it, on the number, and then the guys who miss it by a number or a couple they're the saddest people in the world at the time. And some people have been doing it for 15 years, like Mac O'Grady, 17 years. So anyway, then they announce to everybody people who have made it. They hand out binders to each person, and then they say, if you have never been a PGA Tour member, you have to stick around for 2 more days for PGA Tour orientation. I didn't know that. And
so, either. Yeah.
I take this binder, I drive back to my motel, I get on the phone, I'm calling my parents. I'm calling my sponsors now that I have a sponsor because I have a PGA Tour card, and I tell them it's a very exciting time, and I'm so excited that I don't really it hasn't been turned into reality yet. Can't sleep. I'm so excited about this. And then I go into orientation the next day, and they open it up, and they go through all these things, what you can do, what you can't do. They want you to sign a document that you can financially support yourself for a year or have the backing to do so. They talk about the rules of golf. They bring in a PGA Tour a tour player to talk from experience. And keep in mind, everyone who's there early in the 9 o'clock the next morning are probably hungover because they were celebrating all night. And then I remember there was a guy, now I've got this all documented in my book, so it's in there. And I remember there's this guy great guy, he's from Ole Miss. His name is Buzz Fly. And that's his name. So add him to the list of interesting names. Buzz was a great guy, great college player from Ole Miss. So everyone, and at the end of the couple of days, they've got the cards and they're handing them out, and they call your name up, and obviously Zokol being last on the alphabetical list. When my turn was coming, I'm walking out, everyone knew I was from Canada. So everyone starts singing, "Oh, Canada." And no one knows the words after "Oh, Canada," so it stops quickly right after that. But when Buzz Fly went up to get his card, everyone's going, buzz, and the whole room sounded like a beehive. But it was all in a lot of fun. So you learn, and then that's where you sign your media rights away. They talk all about that in depth, that if you want to become a member of the PGA Tour has to collectively own all the media rights of every single member. You cannot be a member without one. And that gives you the opportunity to play for millions of dollars, tens of millions, at the time, $14 million was all the money in the purse. I think it's like 300 million now, or I'm not even sure what it is. So anyway, you sign your rights away, and which is fine. I mean, if you don't have to sign it, you don't have to be a member. Right. And these decisions factor into your decision. So I gladly signed it, and then I moved on and got home and celebrated. And I got a check. The check's hanging on my wall to this day for $33.33 was my very first paycheck, having qualified as a full-time PGA Tour member.
Wow. So, well, that's that's a really great story and a wonderful lead-in. So, because I think it touches on a few things that I think are interesting. Am I here to sort of say, oh, we need to dismantle the PGA Tour? Of course not. But I do think it's helpful context on a few things when you understand they essentially, for a very, very long time, had a monopoly. And that's part of the reason I think we saw what happened with Live Golf. And so one of the things I did in preparation for today was, I wanted to sort of put together a list of kind of the behaviors and sort of see if they line up with what we know happens on the PGA Tour in terms of getting your card. So I said, I like a list of monopolistic behaviors. Number one, control over market access. They have absolute control over who gets a card, right? So they have control over market access.
Well, hold on. What do you mean? Okay. Well, don't you have control about your golf game?
You have control as your golf game. All I'm saying is, yes, it's merit based in that way.
Okay.
But they say how many people have a tour card.
Yeah.
They say how many people can play each week. They say they have control over access on an ongoing basis. So. They have exclusive participation requirements. So one of the things I think a lot of people wouldn't know, you and I certainly know, and some who are around the game quite a bit. But once you have a PGA Tour card, it's very restrictive in terms of your ability to play anywhere else. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And how do they frame that? Do they basically say you're with us or against us, or how?
So basically, if you're a PGA Tour member, in order for you to play in any event other than your home country, you have to get released and they have to be signed off on a conflicting event release. Mm-hmm. So if you're John Rahm and you're a member of the PGA Tour, and you want to take a release. Say you don't want to play the Players Championship, which is a very big, important tournament to the PGA Tour. It's their major. It's a major nowadays, isn't it? Yeah,
That's what I heard. Yeah,
it's a major. And and he wants to go play in Asia, in Hong Kong, because someone's running a tournament and it's conflicting, and he's going to have to apply for a release from the commissioner or the CEO now, and it's up to, and the CEO is going to say, no, sorry, we want you to play, you're a strong asset to the Players Championship. We are not releasing you. So he doesn't get a release. So if he goes and plays it anyway, then he will be fined, and he will be put in a position of being, a member not in good standing. So there's limitations and so forth, and he'll be fined. So I remember in 1984, I wanted to play in the Utah State Open, which I happened to win. And I asked for a release. They gave it to me because in 1984, the name Richard Zogel didn't bring any value to the PGA Tour event. I think it was the Buick Open. So the PGA Tour has control of being able to release or not release every player based on whatever their rationale is. Yes.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. And I think, don't get me wrong, I do think there are some pros to having that. It's your product, so forth. But I think at times, if you're going to hear sort of the gripes from some of the top players, it was too restrictive at times in terms of the ability to play in certain other events. One of the other things that would be demonstrate sort of monopolistic tendency, control over intellectual property, which to me is, I think I personally am not the biggest fan of Phil Mickelson. I think what drove in part his embrace of LIV was one of his core gripes or complaints about the PGA Tour was, he would be watching the Golf Channel like anybody would on the weekend, and they'd be showing a 1 hour replay of him winning the PGA Championship, and he's going, they're making all the money off of this. I don't see any of it. Because I've signed over my image and likeness rights, right? And it's something that everybody is, and I do think it's kind of interesting that they put you through your 2-day school right after you get your card, where you're basically willing to do whatever they want you to do in that moment. They don't sort of say, hey, go consult with your lawyer or come back or any of that sort of thing. But yeah, I wonder where you come down on that in terms of the image and likeness rights as it pertains to being a PGA Tour player.
Yeah, well, I think that there's a good argument there. Totally understand Phil's perspective when he came out with that, and he's not wrong. However, the thing is, Phil Mickelson at that moment when he wanted his to own his personal identity, to monetize on it, the PGA Tour made him millions upon millions upon millions of dollars, and was the platform in which he now has a different perspective than he did when he was a rookie on the PGA Tour. And it's the same thing. So every person who aspires to be on the PGA Tour, they're trying to get their game and their head straight so they can become independent, so they can make a lot of money, so they can achieve their their lofty ambitions as a professional golfer. And the only way to do it is there's this thing called the PGA Tour. And if you get there, and if you perform, and if you become a star, now you're going to have a different problem down the road, of which we bump into you're talking about. And I totally get it. But, it's a chicken and egg thing to a large degree. Right. And what do you do? Is there I think there should be at some point. Phil owns that, and maybe there needs to be something kind of negotiated if you decide to leave, and you want to be in good standings and get clarity. There should be some exit strategy, I suppose, right. If there's for those who want to have their cake and eat it too, and go somewhere else and enjoy the benefits of being a high-profile celebrity golfer.
Yeah. This episode of Tough Lies is brought to you by TrueSpec AI Yardage Intelligence. Most golfers use GPS. Smart golfers use data. TrueSpec pairs high-resolution course mapping with AI-powered shot strategy through a mobile app that knows exactly where you are on the course, current wind conditions, elevation change, and most importantly, your shot tendencies. It doesn't just tell you the number, it recommends the club, the target, even the smart miss. All you have to do is execute. TrueSpec, AI yardage intelligence, because strategy should be automatic, pressure is not. It's all interesting fodder for discussion. I think it bleeds a little bit back into the discussion we had previously, previous episode around sort of unionizing PGA Tour. And I think, those are some of the things that might have been at the forefront of a discussion around that, sort of better sort of transparency when it comes to sort of the money that is being made off of image and likeness rights and greater participation for the players that drive it, that sort of thing. One other piece that I want to discuss from this view of monopolistic behavior, because this is a really interesting one for me too. Shifting financial risk to the participants. And so in this example, shifting the financial risk to participants. So, and to me, that checks another box in the sense of, I don't know another professional league up until very recently the PGA Tour where the costs each week were borne by the player. Like if you were in the NHL or NBA or whatever, you got off a plane and they handed you a bill for your flight, people would go bananas. But every week, the PGA Tour player goes to play somewhere. He's bearing that cost, and he's covering the caddy, he's covering the hotel, he's covering the airfare, he's covering all the coaches, all of that stuff. He has to make the cut in order to, at minimum, cover those costs. And there's lots of weeks where they don't. And I just sit there go, like, this is a professional league. Like, how do they get away with this? And I think the answer is born out of this idea that they're basically monopolies because they can.
There has been a lot of discussion on this matter over the decades. Yeah, I really feel sorry for these guys that they have to pay for their own private jet and spend that much.
Well, different era now, yes. But I think you would agree back in your day, like there was a lot of financial peril if you didn't make. And
that was one of the things that the players were most proud of. That they start fresh every year. It was very unique to any guarantees in golf. Everyone starts with a clean slate at the start of the year, and not only that, it's meaningful for the Friday cut because, and it used to be the Friday cut. You made the cut, you weren't even guaranteed a paycheck then. If you finished towards the end of the year, you got zero, and you had to cover your costs. So that was an intriguing thing for the PGA Tour, where the PGA Tour players say, look, unlike those other wussies in those other sports that get guaranteed money, and and they're bitching and complaining about covering their costs. They've got this cost and that cost, and yeah. So they were able to turn it around, and the players, the PGA Tour under Dean Beeman's back commission, they had looked at paying the PGA Tour, but would start depleting the purses to a degree. And all the players who are capitalistic minded, they said, no, let's play for the money. Let's play. Put that in the purse. Let's put that money in the, so
let me just,
that's where it came back.
I think that is the greatest hose job of all time.
You're not wrong.
That they convinced you guys that was that. Oh yeah, well it's just you got a clean slate, and it's like, what? I would sit there go like, I'm a professional golfer on the tour. I have the card. You should pay pardon my French, the fucking expenses for me to go to these events. Like I am, like that is crazy. I get the idea of the cut. You don't make money. But there should be a travel allowance for all players every week minimum. Yeah. And they're doing it now, and they're only doing it because of LIV.
Yes.
Right?
Well, it's always competition always helps out and sharpens the edge.
Yeah.
So, because there was a lot of talk that if you're in the tournament at the start of the week, there should be a minimum stipend to cover costs.
Yeah.
And you know, in cost, like in my era, when I missed a cut, it hurt financially. I tell the story in my book that I ran out of money. I was broke. I'm on the road with 3 children and my wife, and my only costs were my airplane seat and my hotel room and 2 hotel rooms a night, and I ran out of money. And back in that area, that wasn't an uncommon thing. And,
Sure.
and you know, was able to turn things around. But at that time, I was a believer in the stipend. I wanted that. Nowadays, if you're a brand new rookie coming out of the PGA Tour, you're advanced $500,000 to cover your expenses. And that money goes against your prize winnings, but it advances. You don't have to go out and get a sponsor. And you know, like I did, or guys who in my era did. But yeah, it makes for interesting stories. That's for sure.
And I would sort of, we'll move on, but I would make the 1.2, which is, I think back then in particular versus now, because of that financial risk that players were taking on, it wasn't unusual for players to sign bad deals from a sponsorship standpoint, because they would look at it and say, you know what, this might be the only money I make all year. So if this is the equipment company that wants to sign me for this much money, I might play this brand even though I like this equipment over here better.
That's right.
It might be better for me. So you would see players play all kinds of weird equipment that came out because the brand wanted them to promote it. You know, those crazy irons that look like Red Flintstones clubs that Corey Pavin had used for a while, right?
What were those things called again?
That comes to mind, and even the Invex driver for Wilson with John Daly. There's a bunch of ones that sort of spring to mind. But to me, that was one of the implications of this type of monopolistic behavior, was it caused not the best product to be out there because they put their players in a position where they had to make sort of financially self-sustaining decisions.
Sure. But keep in mind too, in that time, the PGA Tour, it wasn't as profitable as it is today. They have excess money, and this is where, you know, back in 1968, when Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer and Tom Watson, the players really pushed it hard against the PGA of America to have their own players division. Those players saw the books and saw how much money was coming in and where it was going. And they didn't have excess amount of money to be able to distribute it because, you know, it would cut into the purses. So, you know, decisions were made. The players knew about them. The players didn't bitch about them because they knew that they just wanted to, you know, let my golf club speak. And if I was able to make $500,000 in the year, you know, that was the poker game they were playing. And how they went about it and what they lived for. So
it's truly fascinating. It
really is.
I want to move us to the you know, our Mind Track mental golf discussion.
Mind Track moment.
Mind Track moment. And to me, the moment from this week, you know, there's lots of things that we can talk about. But one of the things that struck me was the weather delay. And you know, you're playing an event, whether you're amateur or pro, the weather comes, you know, so it's not playing necessarily in difficult weather conditions per se, but it's like, you know, all of a sudden the lightning comes, you got to go inside, but then you got to get yourself back out. And especially to me, if you had momentum before the weather struck, how do you get it back? So I'm curious sort of your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So basically, this is all about, we hear it all the time, and we're redundant on this show. The Mind Track Moments always is to a large degree is redundant. And it comes back to, it depends on the player. It depends on, like, you know, as I mentioned, when there is a 3-hour rain delay on a Sunday afternoon and you're Tiger Woods with a 5-shot lead, Tiger Woods' mindset in that situation would be very different than a rookie on the PGA Tour who's never been in that position. Now you're in a situation where you're stuck in the locker room. You're going eyeball. It's crowded in there with players, and you're maybe sitting beside Tiger Woods in a round table in the locker room, and your mind is going nuts.
Yeah.
you're not disciplined enough. You haven't the expertise. You haven't learned from your mistakes, having made the mistakes and allowing you to project forward to what's going to happen. Am I going to be able to deal with this? Am I going to win? Am I going to embarrass myself? All these runaway thoughts in your mind that cause you anxiety. You haven't learned to be able to control your conscious thought like a channel changer on the TV, to if you go onto a channel with these poor thoughts that reflect back in the past or project into the future, that you change the channel. So this is where I highly recommend people learning how to meditate and so you can get yourself into states of where you don't project forward that develops this anxiety. My first time I had the lead is, my rookie year when I did the disco dick thing. I had the lead and I was dealing with it, and I had the lead from the first round all the way to the last 4 holes on the final round. I thought sheared at that point when I projected like I could win this thing. That was the biggest mistake, and I didn't realize, that it was a mistake. But until you get through it, and the second time I had the lead going into the final round was the 1986 Anheuser-Busch Classic. I shoot 66th in the third round. I've got a 2-shot lead, playing in the final group, NBC television, and I shit the bed. The night before, I was projecting, what am I going to do with the prize winnings? What am I going to say at the acceptance speech? What if I shoot 80 and embarrass myself?
Right.
Well, I shot 79 that day, and
Wow.
and Fuzzy Zeller went on to win. I'm in my locker room. Fuzzy's right beside mine. He's celebrating, buying the staff champagne, and I'm sitting on the edge of my locker feeling like roadkill.
Right.
And these are things you have to learn how to deal with. And their thought, what you're learning how to deal with is the thoughts you put in your mind. So if you're anxious and constantly worrying about the score and projecting in the future what may or may not happen, you are dead in the water. And until you learn this thought discipline, it's called experience, or have a method, we have a method at MindTrack that keeps your thought process in the present moment. That's the mental skill you must learn, and you must learn to walk in order to walk the gauntlet successfully in those. And that's what you have to do. And it happens in rain delays. It's the same thing that happens while playing on the golf course in that moment.
Yeah, I love that idea about meditation. I'm very excited about my competitive golf plans for this year. I'm gonna be all over this.
And start
year.
everyone has to, as difficult as it is to meditate. I had a difficult time to start, but if you've got to do it, and you have to prepare. My old math teacher, Mr. Hack, he says, if you fail to prepare to fail.
Right.
And preparing to deal with the situation. Ask yourself, how am I going to do it if I make a double bogey? Am I going to really get down on this? If you do, you will collapse. Or how are you going? You have some decisions to make as a player, and you better figure that stuff out before it happens.
Yeah, amazing. So I love that. I would be remiss that if I didn't share some of my own experiences at Bay Hill.
Okay, let's hear them.
Obviously, I didn't. As I may have mentioned previously, I played college golf, University of Tampa. Wonderful experience, Division II. Was hitting it sideways when I graduated, so I didn't see myself making it as a pro like yourself. But I befriended a fellow Canadian when I was at UT. Carl Thomas was his name, and he was in the Parthenon of golf characters. He's at or near the top. He's frustratingly good looking, and knew it. Was a so very sort of cocky, arrogant guy, but in a way that you adored at the same time. And his father, actually, interesting, was a professional jockey. Was the top jockey in Canada at the time. Moved to the States, so they lived down in Philadelphia, and he rode around there. But anyways, Doug Thomas was his name. And anyways, Carl had a grandfather who lived on the first hole of the alternate 9. There's 3 9s at Bay Hill. A lot of people don't know. Third 9 called the Charger, which is sort of the not quite a par 3, but not as good as the other 2 9s, of course. And so we would go there on the weekends from Tampa and spend night at his grandparents. We would go have a really good time at Pleasure Island, as one would at that age. And Carl knew the starter. One of the great things about Bay Hill back in that day, as you may know, was a lot of really great players lived and played around there, and were members.
Greg Norman had a home there. Remember?
Yeah, sure. And Payne Stewart lived on the 12th tee.
Yep.
And you'd hear his country music a mile away, blasting out of his garage. And you would go, and Arnie would be on one end of the tee almost all the time. You could spot him a mile away, and that was really cool. But Carl knew the starter, so we would go, we'd party, we'd come home really late, and we would have first tracks first thing in the morning. The two of us would be able to sneak out and zip around the course in 2 hours, and then we'd go back to bed, sort of thing. And we played. I'll never forget, we played, and we were played so quickly, they're still due on the course by the time we got to 17.
Yep.
And we get to 17, which is a very challenging, beautiful par 3, tough hole, water on the right, all that. Anyways, so I just remember this so vividly because I just thought it was crazy. We both hit it to the left edge of the green, flags on the right side, just like you would see in the tournament. So we're 65, 70 feet away. He makes his from 70 feet, and I make mine from 65 feet, and in the dew. So you could see the arc of the ball all the way to the hole, and both of them went in. And I just thought, we should just leave them there, because if anybody comes and sees this, they'll be like, holy shit. Like the ball, literally the path the ball went. But yeah, truly wonderful memories. I do remember, too, practicing putting one day early in the morning, and I see this ball go whizzing by, and I look up, and it's the king on the practice green. And I just about lost it. And I very quietly picked up my ball and just thought, well, he clearly wants to practice. I'm going to leave his green to him. He's out at this time of day, and sort of got out of his way. But yeah, really, really fun memories. And if anybody gets the opportunity to go and play, you should absolutely do it. It's a wonderful golf course.
It is. Yeah. My experience is the few times that I've had, as I mentioned, playing with Arnold, having the opportunity to do that, and shaking his hand, and to just feel so proud to be part of an association and a sport that that a person like Arnold Palmer led the charge, and was so meaningful to all golfers, and particularly all PGA Tour members.
The consummate professional in so many ways, the pioneer of really endorsement sports marketing as we know it. He was a pitch man for everybody for a very long time.
Cigarettes,
Mark McCormick at IMG. Oh yeah,
he was John Wayne. He
truly was. Yeah, he transcended the game for sure, and
he did.
In a way that was really, really impressive. That's our show for this week. I do think maybe a thought or two in terms of what we might see this coming week on at the colloquially called fifth major.
So we got the Players Championship, the first major of the year, establishing itself this year. And I you know what? In all seriousness, I think that the PGA Tour, I think Brian Rolap's plan is literally to just have everyone take a stand saying it's a major and just move forward and just do the tush push and get this thing across the line.
It's going to be like everybody's wearing a hat. It's a major, it's just whether you like it or not. It's
get over it. It's a major.
Get over it. It's a major. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it should be interesting. I'm very interested to see how the Canadians perform. I have to believe that at some point, Corey Connors' putter is going to catch up with the rest of his game. And a place like this, where you have to be so precise, I think is ideally suited for him.
And let me preface this, that it's not Corey Connors' putter. It's
his mind.
Yes, it's by extension, it's his mind. Because the putter reacts to where he is. So when he gets a little tentative, I'd like to see him, adopt a little bit of that John Daly Jr., the fearlessness, take it face on. If you go down swinging. But Just I think he has a tentative nature, and I'd like to see him get mad, and I think he can just take charge and let's not knock on the door. Let's kick the door off its hinges and get this thing done.
Let's run him over. Yeah. I'd love to see it. I think it's always one of the really truly fun weeks in professional golf this week, and very much looking forward to it. And I'm very much looking forward to talking to you about it next week. So have a great rest of the week, and I'll look forward to being with everybody. So make sure to catch up with us on all the socials. You can find us, of course, on the web at toughliespodcast.transistor.fm. We look forward to talking about golf every week. If you got questions or things you want us to discuss, we'd love to hear from you. And we very much look forward to talking about the players next week. Great to see you, Richard.
Thanks, Colin. Always a pleasure. Joe, thank you so much for your behind the scene.
Yep. Thank you, Joe.